Hello, and welcome to the Everyday Alchemist podcast, where we aim to remind you of the power you hold inside of you to create your own happiness and reality no matter what you are going through in life. Our mind and our inner strength are our superpowers, and as you tap into that, you become the alchemist of your life. We all have challenges. It's not the challenges that define us, but it is what we do with it. And today we have an amazing guest joining us. She is another alchemist. She is a supermom, Malvi, who has had to go through the hardest journey of her life in the last 3 years. Malvi's son, Armaan, was diagnosed with CP, cerebral palsy. From the time Armaan came into the world, he was a fighter and he fought till the end. Sadly, Armaan passed away in November last year. Today, we get to hear Malvi's story and how she moved through each phase of her son's life. Welcome, Malvi. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I admire your bravery for being here and to speak about Armand's journey because I know it's pretty raw still. It
Yeah.
hasn't been that long. And
Yeah.
me and you were just chatting before I started recording. We both are quite nervous today.
Yeah.
I think because it is such a big topic and we just want to make sure we do justice to this topic
Yeah.
and to Armand to honor him. So we are a bit nervous. But I'm sure we'll be fine. We've got our angels around us. So can we so for people that don't actually know what CP is, could you explain in your own words what it is and how it affects children?
Yeah. So, from my understanding, it's a like very broad spectrum disability, and it sort of is due to either a sort of like a brain injury that will be due to lack of oxygen, or it could be a blood sugar thing. Like in the case of Arman, it was to do with his time of birth, like what everything that happened there. Some people they do develop it over time, but essentially it's issues or complications with like muscle development or having weaker muscles, mobility issues, and then obviously like the cognitive things to go with it. So the way we always used to put it was, our mind could be doing something very small to the eye, but it's like he's running a marathon. So it's it really takes it out of kids that, like we've obviously come across a lot of kids. So I feel like, it's definitely something that affects them in their brain, but it's like they're running a marathon with their whole body.
Okay. Is it also on a spectrum where some kids
It
might
is.
not have all the symptoms?
Yes, definitely. So, when we were diagnosed with it, which obviously we'll touch on later, but um it's definitely like a very broad spectrum. Some people may only display like stiffness in their body that they can sort of control quite a lot. Some people may have very extreme like with the case of our son, it was quite extreme. And the funny thing or the interesting thing about it I find is even with the spectrum, people sort of do go through different stages, and obviously like with medication and things, it's they could be having what they call dyslexia where they can get really stiff or really
Mhm.
loose sort of muscle, and then they'll get completely to the other side. So what I think, because it's so broad, people are not really only in one category. It could be that something else happens, or as they develop they go closer to one side to the other. So it is very broad, and I think it's definitely like a very umbrella term for a lot of different things. Yeah.
It makes sense because my daughter has Rett syndrome, as you know, and it is on a spectrum, and it's very similar where they have loose muscle tone as well. But each child is different, so
Very different.
all the symptoms are so different. But so thank you for sharing that because I think it'll give a base understanding for people to know where Armand was.
Definitely.
So maybe if you could start at the beginning of your journey. I know because I've known you for a while now that your journey started when you were trying to get pregnant for a number of years,
Yeah.
and that didn't happen until it did happen
Until
one
I
day for
came
you.
along.
Yeah.
Yes.
Could you take
Yeah.
us through that journey?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, we were married for 8 years when we did conceive our man, and until then, we did have quite a lot of struggles. We went through all our checks and everything that needed to be done, just to make sure. And like I think the other thing is like in our community, it's a lot of this. They sort of expect, and I mean, again, this isn't directed at anybody in particular, but it's a very community based thing where it's like you get married and it's just like, when are you having kids?
Yeah.
So you always have that pressure, whether you push it away, whether you don't want to think about it, there's always someone there that's going to be like, so what about, kids?
Yeah.
So, it was something that myself and my husband always wanted. We always wanted kids. We always wanted a family. And whether that was our own or when we got to that stage where we had been trying for 8 years and we had done all our tests and everything was fine, it just something wasn't quite lining up. And we had thought, actually what we're going to do is we're going to just spend this year and focus on ourselves, and we're going to do the trips we've never been able to do. And, we, both of us didn't get to do OEs or anything like that because we sort of went from studying to work or whatever it was. So we thought, you know what, we're going to use this year. We're going to do stuff for ourselves. We're going to book a UK trip, and we had friends getting married in Fiji. So it was going to be this big friends reunion. It was like, we're going to party. We're going to have a great time. And, like the universe has a way of just saying, you're not expecting it. So here you go, which which I just think is the most beautiful thing. We were getting ready to go on this trip, and I remember just thinking to myself, I don't want to go and have my period or something like this, and just feel crook when we're hanging out with all of our friends and all of this. And it's crazy. Like over those 8 years, I did so many pregnancy tests and was so disappointed, after each one. And I suppose it's the one that you go in thinking, surely that's not that, but let's just tick that off. And I just remember looking at it and going, oh my gosh, like, what? There's 2 lines. Like, what does this mean? Like, oh my gosh, does this mean I'm pregnant? And the funny thing is, we've always, my family's quite religious, and then being with my in-laws, and this is just something in you that makes you draws you back too. So I just went straight back to my puja box, and I sat there and I cried, and I just thought to myself, of all times, right now, this is amazing. So I traveled when I was 3 or 4 weeks pregnant, thinking, oh my god, I can't say anything, which was really interesting because it was trying to dodge drinks and trying to enjoy this wedding and this party sort of vibe with a whole bunch of friends. But it was amazing. And I think about it now and I just think I suppose I just was so happy and content that I never felt like I missed anything. That was one of the best trips that we've ever been on. We from there we just had this amazing, lovely pregnancy where it was no issues, and even myself being a bit bigger and everything like this, I didn't have, thank God, any diabetes or blood sugar or any issues. So at the time we were living in Dunedin, and then we decided, we're going to come back up to Auckland and be with all of our family, have that support system around us. And then it just got to the point where we were like, okay, yeah, smooth sailing, this is great. So I suppose for us, it was sort of we waited for so long, and then there was just so many changes, and that was it was really beautiful, and just the most amazing timing.
The universe just has the most perfect timing. We ask, that's why we say we ask, we believe, and then we go into this position of just receiving, because the divine timing is the best timing. Our timings, we tend to rush things. So I surrender into divine timing now, because I know whenever it's meant to happen, it'll happen.
It will happen.
To do with anything in life now. So if we just fast forward to the day of your delivery.
Yeah.
I know your story, so I'm just going to set the scene. So I know you were taken in for an emergency C-section.
Yes.
If you could just sort of take us through that, and then and then what happened after that, and the diagnosis.
Yeah. So basically, for us, again, pregnancy was all healthy, all fine. Did our transfer from Dunedin to here. Went through a midwife that other friends and family had used. And then it got to the point where I was in labor for about 5 days. Had gone over my due date, but because there wasn't anything that was blaringly in the face as a risk, I think, obviously there are the protocols that they have to follow. We then got to the Monday night before Armaan was born. There was a whole lot of movement all night, and then I woke up on the Tuesday and there was no movement. And I was like, okay, he could just be tired, he could just be sleepy, I don't know what's happening. And then I started to get really concerned because I thought the night before there's a lot of movement and now there's hardly anything. So there's a whole lot of monitoring and all of this kind of thing. Went into the midwife, and then it was like, oh, this is going to be an emergency. We have to go in. So they took us into North Shore. Everything there happened. They got us prepped and took us into the theatre. And it's, like, again, what you see is so glorified in the sense of an emergency even. And then you go in and this is like, it's just next level. And I just remember sitting there with my husband, and like, obviously because it's an emergency, the surgeons were brilliant. They were trying to just make it, hey, do you know what you're having, and how can we show you, and how can we tell you, and what would you like to do, and just trying to keep it very light. And I just remember, like, you're lying there and your partner's sort of in this space, and I just remember looking up at him, and he sort of went like this, and it was like, what is he tracking? Like, what has moved across the room that he's looked at? And I said, what are you looking at? And he goes, I think they've got our baby over there. And I was like, don't be silly. They said they're going to tell us, like, And as soon as I started, having this conversation with him, like, oh, don't be silly. That can't be a baby. Like, surely they just moved something. One of the nurses on the other side was like, we need resus stat. And I just went into this panic, like, was shaking on the operating table, like, was asking 100 million questions. And obviously at that time, their focus is on the baby and, just sorting out what's happening with you. So I suppose questions just kind of go into like a void of, we'll come back to you in a second. We'll answer your questions in a second. And my husband always tells me how there was probably about, I don't know, like 12 to 13 people around this little incubator and around our son. And one of the nurses did say, if it makes you feel any better, there are more people with your child than there are with you at the moment. Which, suppose in a way it was a comfort. So when he was born, he was not breathing. So up until we got into theatre, he was okay. And then, he was not breathing when he was born. They resuscitated him for about 15 minutes. So in that time, obviously, there was lack of oxygen to his brain, and he sustained a brain injury in that time. And then they got him back, my little fighter, and he managed to, carry on doing what he had to do. And I just remember saying to my husband, I don't care what happens to me right now. Like, if they're taking the baby to a special unit, you are going with them, which he did. And about 3 hours after that, he started displaying seizures. So we were in North Shore at this point, and they tried overnight to sort of stable him as much as they could. They realized it was really out of their spectrum of what they could do, and they needed a specialist team. And so about 7 o'clock in the morning, we had a team of about 8 or 9 doctors and nurses that came in and picked him up from Skaboo in North Shore and took him down to the NICU unit in Auckland or Starship, whatever you would put it under. And they had taken him at 7, and then they said, we're going to come back and get you. And so we didn't, neither of us were able to go because it was such a huge team that came to get him, and there was just no space for us. So post C-section, I was sort of useless to him at that point anyway. Didn't really get to see him because in the operating room, I didn't really get to see him at all. I think I saw a photo that my husband took, and he was actually allowed to be there with them. And then in Skaboo, my husband was with them the whole time. The rooms were really little, so I couldn't really even get in there to see him. So there's now been 24 hours that I haven't seen, like, actually been able to see or touch my son. And then we got to NICU at 2 o'clock. So between 7 and 2, we had no idea what was happening with our child. All we knew was that he was being taken to this NICU unit, and whether he would survive or not, they didn't know that either. So it was really just next level, and I just felt like the time was going so slow. And then we got there, and they sort of said, hey, look, we've heard of what's happened, and we've heard, Mum, you actually haven't even been able to see or touch your son. And I was like, no, I haven't. And so they gave me a good like 20 minutes to half an hour. They said, look, we're going to do the rest of our rounds, and then we're going to come back and have a chat with you guys. Until then, you can't pick him out because he's got all these monitors and all these, machines and everything helping him. But you can touch any bare skin you can see, you can kiss him, you can be with him, you cry, whatever you want to do. So yes, I mean, I look back at those photos now, and I just think, I remember thinking and getting angry with my husband at that time, being like, why are you taking photos of me crying? Like, what is this? But I look at them now, and they're just the most beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing, and just so raw. And it's just
I
something
think that's
else.
why photos are so important to build
Yeah.
memories, right?
And it's, I mean, like I say it all the time now, even now, because we don't have Armaan with us, that, we are so lucky that we're in this day and age where we have these
Mm.
technologies that we can rewatch and we can, experience being with them again, as opposed to years and years ago where it was like they're really gone, like you don't
Mhm.
have anything to remember them by but your memories.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's beautiful. But yeah, so I mean, at that point, we were in NICU for a month, and he progressively got better and was doing breathing on his own. And as they do, they progress through the ward. And I think we got to a week out from going home, so they were going to put us into a family unit so that we could learn how to be with him and learn how to
So
do
at
things
this
for him.
stage, had they told you what condition or nothing? He
No,
hadn't been
no,
diagnosed yet.
no, sorry.
That's
All we
okay.
knew at that point was that obviously there's complications. There's a brain injury. And I remember saying to the doctor, like, that day when they said we'll come back in half an hour, the first day, and she said, "Is there any blaring questions?" And I said, "Look, when he left North Shore, nobody could tell us anything. Is my child going to survive? Like that? That's what I want to know." And she was like, "Look, at this point, your child is he's a fighter. He's doing what he's got to do. Like he's not a dying baby." And it was
Mhm.
that for me, I think, was the biggest like relief. And I thought anything else I can handle, like anything else that comes our way I can handle. I have my baby, we'll do whatever we need to do for him. So we've had friends and family that have had kids in NICU, and obviously they've come out, so we just thought, this is the same kind of process.
Mhm.
They'll slowly pick up and they'll slowly get to where they got to be.
Mhm.
And they had put a nasal gastric tube in for Armaan so that we could feed him. So again, he was having my milk and it was being expressed and fed to him, and so we're still going through that whole process of a new mum, which was lovely. And then, yeah, 3 weeks down the track, they were like, right, next week we're going to put you guys in this family room so that you guys can train and just see how we give him the X amount of meds that we have for him to help with the seizures, so that you guys can train if he pulls out his nasal gastric tube, which she did a lot of, how to put it back in, how to test that it's in the right place, all of that. And they said, we want to have another meeting with you just to go over now. We've done all these tests, MRIs and this and that,
Mhm.
where we're at.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. And we sat in this room with these three doctors, and there was a neurologist and a couple of other specialist doctors. And they basically said, look, your son has a brain injury due to the lack of oxygen. What that's going to mean for him, we don't know. So we can train you and equip you the best we can ourselves and through the community programs that are available, with the nurses and physios and everything like that. But how things are going to go for him, we actually don't know. And so I
Mhm.
suppose at that point they didn't know whether it was cerebral palsy or whether it was something else until he was going to be bigger. So for that first year, we went home with he has a brain injury, and that was it.
Right.
Um, and then we had people like physios and uh, speech therapists and play therapists and community nurses and things like that. So anything that went wrong, they would pop in and they would be the ones that would help us out. And then as he got bigger, he had quite a lot of indigestion issues because obviously like the mobility is not there, so you're sort of in one sort of position. There's a lot of acidity problems, like for him. So until they sort of got onto that, there was a lot of vomiting. There was a lot of, like a lot of things that you just sort of, it becomes your norm. I think
Yeah.
that's one thing that people were like, oh wow, that's amazing. You guys are doing so well. And again, as a mum, as a mum with a child that has different abilities, you will understand as well. And I'm sure a lot of mums out there will, is if your child does not fit the mold or does not fit you, it is what it is. You do life with
Go with
them.
it, right?
Yeah, you go with it. You do life the way you can, whatever's best for your child.
Yeah.
So there's no medal for that. It's you're being a
No.
parent.
Yeah.
So I used to find that really weird when people were just like, oh, you're doing such a great job and this is great. I went, thank you for that. But also it was like, well, this is what you do though as a parent,
You would do
right?
anything for your child, right? And if that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it got to the point where once he was about a year and a half, um, we were expecting Anika as well, and it was like, oh my god, we're going to have a new baby. Plus, now they're saying they want to do this operation for him, and so that what they ended up doing is a Mickey button, which essentially is instead of having the nasal gastric tube in, he had a little button, a little operation, and the button basically goes straight into his tummy, and his tummy is sort of attached to the stomach wall, just so it doesn't move, and the milk just goes directly into his stomach. And we found that was really great for him in the sense that he had a clear face again. We had his face back and no tube on his face. And he, it just gave him so much more ability to do things. And we felt like he just was so much calmer. And I guess we were also really grateful that having a newborn at that time that was like grabby, and as she grew, she wasn't going to go and grab Hayes tube out of his nose and all this kind of thing. But it wasn't until we went in to get that Mickey button done that we had some we had obviously regular brain activity scans and things that we would do for him every 6 months, and the neurologist had popped in and said, hey, look, I know we see you guys are here in the hospital, we just thought we'd pop in and let you know how the results of the last scans and stuff were. And she goes, oh, yeah, it looks like epileptic seizures. And I just remember going, wait, stop. So is it epilepsy that he has? Like, is it, I've never heard of you guys using these words before. So is this epilepsy? And she goes, oh, have we not used these words with you before? And it was like, well, no, you haven't. And then she sort of started unpacking the epilepsy side of things in terms of his seizures were epileptic. She started unpacking this term of CP, of cerebral palsy. And we was like, oh wow, like this is just giving us a whole lot of things. And I just remember myself and my husband sitting there after I had gone to sleep that night and like scrolling and being like, oh, this is what CP is and this is what this is. And I suppose for us until then it was just like brain injury, this is how big this topic is. And then when they said epilepsy and when they said CP, it made it come down to here, and we could go, this is what these characteristics are. This is what this does. This is why when we have a physio or a speech therapist come, this is why they're not doing this. They're doing it this way because it's going to work in line with, the CP. And it just, I think for us, it was this huge penny drop, and it made it easier for us to understand how we could better parent Armaan. And I think, up until then, not to say that we had like lost hope or anything, but it was up until then, it was like, we want to try this with him for quality of life. We want to go out, we want to do this, but how can we better aid him? And until they gave us that CP spectrum, in that title and that umbrella, we didn't know at all. And, and again, like I always refer to that, any little thing that he did was like running a marathon for him. So he was exhausted and he was tired. And at that point, it was so much easier to say to people, well, you imagine running a marathon, you'd be exhausted. He's just done a 45-minute physio session. He's exhausted.
Exactly.
So,
it's kind of sad that you had to even explain that to someone, right? Because people, they sort of don't use their common sense. And I feel like, but I think there's more education needed around how to talk to a special needs child and the family, because they could come in and say a few things and go away and leave you with, the amount of mental torture they leave you with is just exhausting. And I've been there. So sorry to interrupt you, but I just
it's one of those things that I feel like it's a community thing. It's just a general people thing.
I think it's a people thing.
I remember having to, like, when I used to take Armaan like to the mall, we'd sit and have a coffee and it'd be like, we're doing a little family thing, he's on our lap, he's with us. Okay, he's got an NG tube in his nose and there's a sticker on his face. But it doesn't mean that that gives you the right to walk past us at a cafe and stare at him. And I used to get so worked up, and I remember my husband used to be like, why are you letting this bother you? And I was like, why don't they just stop and take a picture? Like, why don't they come and ask us? Like, like sometimes it was just just talk to us rather than stand there and stare and wonder and come up with stories in your head as to what's happened to my child,
It's so interfering, because it does disturb you. And I was the same. I used to get really worked up about it until I came to a point and I'm like, you know what? That's their lack of understanding. And if they don't want to come and ask me, then so I remember we were coming back from Australia one time, and it was just, I can never forget this. We were sitting So it's Nick, Nishai, and me, and then next to us, not next to us, like so in the row next to us, but in front of that row, there
Yeah.
was an Indian lady sitting, and she obviously had seen us walking into the plane, or maybe at the airport. I don't know because I don't remember
Yeah.
seeing her. But throughout the travel
Right.
home, she kept turning around and going like that to look at
Oh,
Australia, and
so
I was
frustrating.
like, "Oh my god, I am gonna
Losing
like
it.
say something." And I said to Nick, "What is the problem?" She obviously knows Nisha's got an issue, right? And Nisha wasn't even making any noises; she was just being herself, just
Yeah.
maybe a little muttering here and there, but nothing
Yeah.
like screaming, creating a thing, right?
Yeah.
And I just thought to myself, "Oh my god, if I just," and she did ruin my plane trip home, but then I just thought to myself, it's people like that kind of ruin it for us because they don't
Yeah.
know how much it takes for us to get into a plane in the first place.
That's a huge, like,
It's a
honestly, I was just
huge
gonna
thing,
say, I
right?
was like, that's amazing that you guys have done the amount of travel that you have with Nishai.
Yeah.
Like, it was always something we would have loved to do with Armaan, and we unfortunately didn't get to do it. But it just takes so much, there's so much planning. There's so many things that you have to think, right, we have to have this for on the flight just in case this happens.
Yeah.
We've got to declare these amount of medications because there's all these strong medications we've got to take for our child because that's what they need. But
It is. It's a lot of pre-planning,
yes.
and then
And a
like
lot of
yeah,
anxiety on the plane
anxiety.
too, right? Because
Exactly.
they could get uncomfortable. And like you say, she was just happy and,
Mm,
her sounds and everything. And that's fine. Like for us, it's like, hey, they're happy, they're in their space. But to other
absolutely.
people, it's like, oh, that's a different sound. Yes, it
Yeah.
is a different sound, but that's their sound. Like
Exactly.
maybe you make a
Yeah.
sound when you eat. Like, does anybody stare at you?
I know it's crazy, and
No,
I do feel like we do need education around that to teach people how to be around,
be
especially
around people.
family. Um,
Yes.
yeah, it sucks to say it in this time and day, like age
Yeah.
where there's so much available, so much education available out there. You could actually read about it, and do some research, but people don't, and they ask you the randomest questions, and you're like, actually, where do you want me to start?
Yeah, yeah,
you know?
basically. Like
Yeah.
I used to really hate like just in like community things, we'd go to a lot of weddings and a lot of prayers and a lot of parties and things. And because again, quality of life, we're taking our son where we want. We're not gonna keep him at home. Like,
No, absolutely not.
he
Yeah.
needs to experience all of these things. And I remember taking when people would say, so what's happened? And it's like, where do you want me to start? Like,
Yeah.
have you got time? Because this is
Mm,
a long story.
absolutely. People
Yeah.
don't consider what you have to go through and how far it's taken you to actually get to where you are, even to step outside the house with your child, especially in the early days, it is huge,
Yeah.
right? Because you are, going through the emotions yourself, then you've got someone else that you need to, like another living person that you have to take care
Yes.
of their emotions, and then you've got a third person coming and just bombarding you with questions. And I don't like it when people talk about stuff in front of Nishaya. It's not that
Yeah.
we don't expose Nishaya to the reality of a condition, but if there's certain things that she does not need to hear, I wouldn't keep it that way. Nick and I, when we need to discuss things, we do it in another room because
Yeah.
we don't want Nishaya to worry because she has no
Yes.
external outlet, right?
No, that's right. Like, we can talk to each other, like as parents, you can talk to each other, you can have supports around you. And as much as, the kids can go to like play dates and things like that, there is still a limit in terms of what they can express, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always used to feel like I mean, people used to be not standoffish, but they used to have like am I going to hurt him? Which I totally understand. You don't quite know how to deal with, but I've got to give credit where credit's due. Like there's been so many like where there's been people that have been standoffish or very like I don't want to hold because I'm afraid of, and it's like thank you for telling me that you're afraid you're going to hurt my child
Mm-hmm.
because that's fine. That just means that you're not comfortable in that situation, and that's fine. You don't want to hold them, but you can still interact, and you are still doing that, and I appreciate you for that.
Mm-hmm.
But then there were the people that just went above and beyond, and there was nothing that they wouldn't do, and nothing that they. Sorry, this makes me really because I
That's okay. You
appreciate it
take your
so
time.
much, but
Yeah.
there was nothing that they didn't offer, or nothing that they wouldn't do, or nothing that was like too
Too
much.
much.
Like I remember going to a friend's house. Um, and I just remember going there for like an afternoon tea and thinking, oh, well, Anika's asleep. And she was very small. Um, and I remember both husband and wife saying, here, look, let us hold Armaan for you. And I mean, they did, and it was great. And I remember the husband holding him and saying, like, being with him and cuddling him, and me saying, "Hey, actually, it's his feed time. I can take him. It's okay," because he gets a bit stiff, and like he gets a bit startled when you guys laugh and stuff. So it's okay. It's all right. Like, let me take him while I feed him. Can I not hold him while you feed him? And I'm like, no, no, yeah, I'll just have to turn the pump on. That's fine. I'm happy holding him. And it was like, oh, but the fact that he was able to offer to do that was just
Mm,
like, it spoke more than anything, and the fact
yeah,
that we had people that were checking in every week and saying, hey, how are you guys doing? And oh my gosh, like, how's this new equipment that he's got? And how's this physio going? Or whatever it was, or down to try, offering to learn how to do things. It was
it
just
makes
like,
such a
it
difference.
makes such a difference because you then feel comfortable taking your child out and going to people's houses that offer to do that, right?
Yeah.
Or
Did
that
you
are
find
like,
in your journey you became very choosy and created boundaries where you go, where you don't go, who you expose your child to? Because
definitely.
we've done that.
Yeah. Obviously, there are a lot of places where you are still obligated to go or be
Mm.
around. Energy's not being great in that situation, but you still have responsibilities and obligations, and you would do that. Um, I feel like there was very little, like in terms of being like, hey, I just have to stand back. Like I say, we did take Armaan to a lot of things. And it was always great because, like, friends, kids and things would, oh, it's Armaan, and they'd like touch him and they'd, like interact with him, which I always thought was amazing.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, there was definitely situations where it was like, actually, if I go to that situation, I'm not going to enjoy myself the way that everybody else would want to enjoy. Um, so I'm actually all right at home with him, or he's actually not 100%. So actually, I'm not going to push him to do those things. So I don't feel like it was so much choosy around people, but it was more around the situation. In terms of, hey, let's all go to the park or something like that, then I would maybe be like, hey, he's not 100%, so I'm actually not going to do that. Or it would be it's a really loud function or something, or it mostly involves everybody having a good time and having drinks and things like that. A lot of the time we we would go, but there was a level of, okay, actually we're gonna go home. I think for us, more than anything else, it was like that level of FOMO kind of went away, because for us it was, it's cool, it's actually this time and we're tapping out now, we're actually going home because we need to do that for our child, rather than wanting to be there till the night ends kind of thing.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think as a parent, especially as a special need parent,
yeah,
you do find your inner voice, and it's quite loud when it needs
yeah,
to be. And I think initially I was, very much doing everything,
yeah,
because I wanted to keep everyone happy. But then it got to a point I'm like, actually, I'm exhausted after this. My child is exhausted. So I was just finding my voice to go, actually, do we benefit in any way going to this?
yeah,
And some people understand. And some
yeah,
people don't understand. And the people that don't understand, they're actually very far away from my circle now. It's not to
yeah.
say, we're not hating on anyone or anything like that, but
Yes, yeah,
you do get to a point where you have to be the advocate for your child.
yeah.
And some
And
people don't
funny you
understand.
say that, actually,
Mm,
because I remember when we were leaving Niku with Arman, and there was a like a family nurse liaison kind of thing. And she literally had said that to me, because I was like, I think I'm going to have real troubles with people. Like, it's a new baby. People want to come and hold him, and
yeah.
they want to be around him, and just being like, oh, if you're sick, please stay away. Like, his immunity is
Mm,
really not good. But she was like, you are the biggest advocate for your child, and you know what is best for him. You have been through training. Like, you need to, like, not be a pushover, and you need to be strong, and you need to say, actually, this is not right for us at this point. You guys
yeah.
carry on, but this is not right for us right now.
Mm. And
So
I guess
yeah,
it is a bit tricky in our community, with our the way we've been brought up. You
yes,
kind of do yes, like you kind of say yes to everything out of respect, and it
yes,
does cause a little bit of up level, because people are like, who is this trying to now
yeah, yeah,
trying to get her way, but
yes,
it is what it is, and you just
yeah,
have to. Yeah, I mean, I
yeah,
truly have found my voice, and I'm not scared to use it. I love Nisha going out to, we love going
yeah,
to like family dues and stuff as well, but
yeah.
I know our limit as well.
Yeah. Yeah. After a certain point, you're like, you know what? Like, we've interacted with everybody. We've been here. This has been really, really lovely, but we don't want to get it to a point where she's going to get uncomfortable,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
we're going to be on edge, so we're actually going to just take her home at this point,
And
which I
she's
think
my
is,
favorite
yeah,
people anyway. So it's like my
yeah,
parents are siblings and their
yeah,
kids, and my brother and his like his wife and stuff.
yeah,
So there's like certain group where you don't even have to think about it. You can just go, and everyone's gonna
yeah. And
help you. Yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, you probably find this with Nishaya as well, but when you are around these people, they are comfortable to just fall asleep. They are comfortable to be like, I remember going to weddings sometimes, and obviously like all the, like, especially on like Padwans and stuff, and the music's so
yeah,
loud. And I just remember like some places would go and Armaan would be really on edge because the people around him, he was sometimes like not so much not comfortable, but he didn't have that comfort as such, like I'm in a new place, I know these people, but I'm okay, I don't know if I can fully fall asleep or whatever. Whereas sometimes we'd go places and he'd be surrounded by like the family and friends that he was really used to. And it would be like, oh my gosh, it's so loud. How is this child sleeping? And he would just be like knocked out to the days, like holding someone's hand, like quite happily there.
kids pick up
So,
on energy so well. They have like a sixth sense about these things. They know where they're comfortable, where they're safe. Where the safe spaces for them. So I'm not surprised that Imran was so connected.
and I feel like, I don't know, like for me, I started to really trust his judgment in
Mm.
that, like in the sense of, and I think that's where, I mean, obviously I'll touch on this later, but that's where Anika, I think, struggles now, without her brother, because he was her anchor in the sense of, oh, I mean, in the sense of everything, but if Paya can do it, I can do it.
Mm.
If he's okay with this person, I'm okay with this person. And I remember, like, this is one memory that I have that's really, really vivid in my mind. And I remember my auntie, my grandma, had come over, and it was after some time, and Anika hadn't seen her for a while, and she was still very small. And she came in, my grandma came in, and she greeted my son and kissed him and hugged him, and was, and he used to love having like older people around him, because again, it's that energy, right? It's that nurturing, it's
Mm.
that love. Um, and it was, like, it's her great grandchild, so she was great, with him. And then she went and sat down, and she kept trying to call Anika, and Anika was sort of very like at odds, and very like, oh, I don't know, like, I haven't seen you in a while, and
Yeah.
this kind of thing. And I just remember Arma making this little like, oh, kind of thing, and she just toddled on over to him, and there was just like the silent conversation. You could see it. It was like this dead silence, and they were just sort of like staring each other out. And then the next minute, she just like went back to my grandma and gave her a big hug and gave her a big kiss. And then she just sat there looking at Armaan, and he had this huge smile on his face, like, good, you're listening to what I'm telling you.
Wow,
And
that's
like, for
amazing.
me, it was like, doesn't matter that they have their own way of communicating, but he was still able to guide her. And
Yeah,
I
as an
think
older
that,
brother. Yeah.
yeah, and I just think that's so beautiful, like,
It
it's,
totally is. I
I,
have no doubt that Arman and Anika were
yeah,
telepathically
yeah,
communicating with each other because
yeah,
special needs children are born with certain gifts.
yeah,
And I know you are quite spiritual as well, so you would
yeah,
understand what I'm saying. So I have
yeah,
no doubt that they were communicating. You don't need
yeah,
words to communicate. Energy
no,
is everything. Energy
yeah.
doesn't need words. So that's amazing.
It was so beautiful, and I just remember, like, that literally was like her goalpost, like, if Paya says it's fine and these people are okay, he's reacting well. Like, after that, it didn't take any stern talking tos, like, it was like, if he's reacting positively with them, I'm going to react positively
She
with
learns
them.
that. So
So
can we talk
yeah,
about Anika?
yeah,
Because I know
yeah,
she's very young and she's lost
yes,
her older brother. How has
yeah.
she coped? I'll ask about you, but since we're
Mm.
talking about Anika, but I just wanted to ask, how has she been since Arman's passing?
She honestly has been really incredible. Like, to be honest, I don't know how a child that young has that endurance. Like, I honestly
Yeah.
don't.
Mm.
Even like the week where we had, where he was, passing essentially. She was just this little light, this little beacon of light that would just pop in and just make it like, okay, we're going through this, but we're together, and it just really gave us that grounding that we needed. And I think it gave him that, okay, cool, my parents are okay, my sister's okay, which it was absolutely beautiful. And I just think, like, even like on the funeral day, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like, how is she going to cope, and is she going to be all right with seeing what she sees? But she gave her brother a kiss, and she you know, like in our community, you know, you do the nazar thing like this. And I was just watching her, you know, when we brought him home before we took him to the funeral home, and you know, she's like standing there doing like this to him, and it was just
Um,
like it's just next level. Like I just thought to myself, how old are you? Like, are you like an old granny, like stuck in a small person's body, or like what is this? And you know, like I find even now she wakes up and she says that she's had this dream, you know, where oh he came and picked me, or he came and grabbed me, and we went and had ice cream, and it's like, oh really? What kind of ice cream did you have? And she has this huge description of, you know, what they did, and it's like in her dream she finds him, you know, and he finds her, and I just think it's so beautiful because she can still have that relationship. And she, the one thing that she's always saying to us is that he's so happy, you know, like every time I see him, she's got this thing and she's like, he's happy. And it's like for us, that just makes us feel so like,
that's your
okay, that's
message.
cool. Like they have that
I feel that
connection.
is your message because, as you said it, I just got goosebumps, and I feel like I need to tell you that that is your message. That
Yeah.
Armaan is telling you and your husband through Anika that wherever he is, he's actually really happy. So
Yeah.
I just love the I just love how open you are with Anika. You know,
Yeah.
you're giving her the time of day where she is actually telling you that she's seeing Arman. And
Yeah.
instead of just saying, oh, no, no, it's nothing, like it's just a dream, you're actually asking questions. So she is going to
Yeah.
grow up being a believer that actually these things do exist because they 100% do exist. Arman is there
Yes.
around you guys because as you leave one plane, you do go into the next plane, but your loved ones, are always around you. So
Definitely.
I actually want to share something. You know, when so you and I met through my daughter's page,
Yes.
Nisha's Journey, and we connected and we got talking. And then shortly after that, I launched my Reiki business and my coaching business. And you made
Yes.
we did a couple of sessions for you guys.
Yes.
And I remember the very first session we did for you guys. So we did the Reiki, and so when I do Reiki, sometimes I get a lot of visions, and you know this.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't get any visions, but it doesn't mean anything. It just means that the Reiki is still flowing. But sometimes the angels, God, they choose to bring messages.
Yeah.
So one of the very first things visions I saw was so I saw you, Anika, and Arman. Arman was in the middle, you were on one side, Anika was on one side, sitting on the floor, facing me. You
Yes.
guys are sitting there, and all of a sudden, Anika swung around really quickly. Now she sort of became me,
Yeah.
looking at you guys.
Yeah.
But and then Anika changed into Lord Ganesha. So to me, and I described that to you, saying that
Yeah.
Anika has come, they were showing you that Anika has come in a form to heal you, to
Mm.
bring healing to you. And that Arman, and she was also there as a healing thing, like a healing angel for Arman.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so for them to do this life together, it was not a coincidence.
No.
And Anika being sent to you was not a coincidence.
Yeah.
So, she obviously everything is set for us. The destiny is already set there. So, as a
Yeah.
soul family, you, Arman, Anika, and your husband are a soul family. We do life with our soul families, many, many lives. And
Yeah.
obviously, this is not the only plane dimension where you do life. You can go into another, you can choose to go into another dimensions as well. But for
Yeah.
whatever reason, you guys have decided, just like my family, to come together and be here.
Yeah.
So Anika coming into your life at the time she did come,
Yeah.
um, and being here and spending time with Arman, it's not a coincidence. I think it's just so beautiful. And I remember I was crying, you were
Yeah.
crying, because it was just so beautiful the way they described it. And they don't sometimes it's just so clear for me to understand what
Yeah.
was happening. And when I told you, we both were crying because we just thought it was just so beautiful.
So beautiful it was. And you know, like I remember saying to you after that as well, is like, you know, like he everything he did, he was like, right, where is she? Oh yeah, there she is. Cool, I'm good. And
Yeah.
the same thing for her, you know. And I really did fear that, you know, when he did pass, she would be really lost without him. But I don't think she's ever been without him, you know. Like even when we started her in daycare, it was like such a new thing for her. And you know, like I just felt like she came to a point where he must have been like, right, okay, I've got to step in somewhere. And I feel like now she goes and she sort of feels that she can be like, she's got his presence around him, so she feels comfortable, you know, like she feels she feels like he's there with her, so she doesn't feel like she's missing out on anything.
Yeah, and I have
Um,
no doubt Anika can probably see Armaan as
yeah,
well, because I catch my daughter Nishaya staring into space, and I have had lots of confirmation that she sees things.
yeah,
Um, and so that's probably why she's felt like she's never been alone, because she's seeing
yeah.
him, and she's so young. For him, for Anika, sorry, it probably just feels like he's still around. Do you know what I
He's
mean?
still
Like,
around, exactly.
yeah,
And like I do find her, like sitting and chatting and playing with her dolls and whatever. And I just sort of think to myself, oh, like she's definitely, interacting with someone or talking to someone or doing something. And then it's not until later that she'll sort of say, oh yeah, Paya and I were playing with this and Paya
yeah.
and I were doing this. And it's like, oh yeah, okay. And so I
And you
tend to
should
like
saw
leave her
that.
when I hear her sort of mumbling and carrying on and you do this and you come here and it's like, okay, that's fine, like I'll leave you do what you got to do.
That's so
Yeah,
beautiful. It just gives me goosebumps to know that. I mean, and it's all thanks to you, because you've given her that safe space to allow that to happen as well. Because most parents will be freaking out and going, "Oh my God, no, you don't talk to anyone. You don't
yeah,
do, like." Especially in our religion, we know with the Hindu background, there's
yeah,
so many things about ghosts and all this stuff. But
yeah.
there's no such things as ghosts. Yes,
I
there's
feel like,
as spirits.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I think it's that perspective, right? Like that's one thing that we've always talked about is like we like to spend our life on the lighter side of life, like
Mm.
that negative energy and the negative things that happen. It's like, yes, they happen, and we know that they do, and that's fine. Some people choose to be in that space always. But for us, it's like we do like to stay on that negative, I mean, that positive side and that positive light. And I just feel like if you think of anything, like, like, I mean, even in our culture, like with Shiv Bhagwan, and people are saying, there's all this, there is a lot of like darkness around him as such, but there's so much good that outweighs that. Do you know what I mean? Like, like
Yeah.
this whole thing about the ashes and about, like just the company or the devotees he keeps, like looking at them, they look quite scary, but it's like you could look at it as scary, or you could look at it as like, look how beautifully they're immersed in that. So it's a
Exactly.
perspective thing.
It
It
is a
definitely
perspective
is.
thing. And, it's like all human beings, all of us look different to each other, right? I
Yes.
mean, there's so many different kinds of spirit. There's good spirit, there's bad spirit. Some people are even saying, and I've been reading and kind of, because I'm really interested in ET and stuff, like aliens, not aliens that, we see in the movies, but
Mm.
aliens as in other spirits, souls living in other dimensions. And they're
Mm.
saying that Shiv Bhagwan, Lord Shiva, is actually, he comes from that dimension, right?
Wow.
Yeah, there's just so much true, like it's things that are actually now coming out, because I listen to a lot of podcasts as well, and it's. I mean, I don't really want to talk about aliens on this podcast because it's not about that, but
Yeah.
just yeah, like saying it comes down to your perspective.
Yes,
Yeah, how you
definitely.
yeah.
How you see the
Um,
world, yeah.
Absolutely. I just wanted to talk a little bit about Armand's journey with you. I know there were lots of hospital admissions, lots of seizures, lots of
Yeah.
pain,
Yeah.
but these kids also bring in a lot of gifts, a lot of love, and a lot of teachings. What has been your greatest learning, and anything you want to say about Armand's journey while he was here with you?
I feel like, even though like the last 18 months of his life was basically we were in hospital more than we were home, we would do 2 weeks in hospital and like barely a week home and then we'd be back again. So we used to be like, oh, we're going back to a second home. It really did become like that. Um, but the fact that we managed to, instead of it being like, oh my God, we're back in hospital again, it was like, you know what, we're going to make the most of just
Yeah.
even being here. And we used to spend evenings together where it would be like I would prep everything for dinner and buy all the things, and then Lesh would come home and have to turn on like burger patties or something, have a shower, pick them up out of the oven, and then bring them into the hospital. And then we'd all sit together and eat and be around Armaan and watch movies together. And Disney movies were like a big thing for the four of us. We'd sit and watch movies together. Um, and it was one of those things where it was like we could be kids with our kids. And
Mhm.
I feel like the whole journey again, it has really taught me more about looking at the abilities in people, whether it's anybody that has sort of any special needs or whether it's people in general, like you look at the good, you look at the abilities, you look at the wins in life, right? And in this day and age, it's really hard to do that because there is so much negativity around, and there is, like I said, there are people that thrive on that negativity or live in that negativity, and that's
Yeah.
where they choose to be. And that's fine. You do you. That works for you. That's fine. But
Yeah.
don't come into the space that we have created that is light, that is, positive, that is trying to see good and put your darkness into it, and I think that has been a big thing for me. Like, I used to really care. I mean, I still do, but I used to really let it affect me a lot, what people thought and how people acted around me, and do they, getting approvals. And I think I got to the point where I saw how some people were around Armaan, and I thought to myself, I know in some people, you come across people that are like, face value is different and what they say about you later is different. And, I've heard so much of it, you know, just over my time. And I feel like I got to the point where I stopped wanting those people's approval, because I thought to myself, if you don't want to be your true self with me, then I don't have to do that with you. You're going to give me a skeptic, like like face value, then that's what you'll get from me. And I felt like, for me, it really hurt me for a while, where I thought like I wasn't good enough, and so my son's also not good enough because of things that he can't control. But then it was like, well, no, it's not like that, because they are not able to see the
Mm.
goodness in him and the light in him and the things that make him him. And I just found like that every day there was something that he'd surprise me with. When I did when I took my pregnancy test for with Anika, it was like I was so consumed by planning his first birthday, and
Mm.
because it was all those on and off 2-week lockdowns and things like that, it was like I was so immersed from Christmas all the way through till his birthday and beyond, that I just completely had forgotten about anything. And I thought to myself, this is really strange. Okay, well, you know what? Again, I'm just going to do a test because it's not going to be anything anyway. And I remember leaving him after giving him a feed and like burping him and everything, and being like, right now, I've got to go to the toilet. I will be right back. Okay. And I'd be like, and I'm just going to go check, but I don't think it's going to be anything. And I remember just leaving him and then coming back in tears and looking at him. And he had the cutest little look on his face, like,
I
you
knew
know
it.
now what I know, and it was the most beautiful thing. And I remember even like throughout my pregnancy, that the whole anytime I felt that I was nervous to have two under two, anytime I was nervous, he would find his way to cuddle up onto me and put his hand on my stomach, and it was like I could feel her inside moving towards his warmth, and it was like, for me, I was like, we're gonna be fine.
Mm.
And I think every day he showed me something like that, like something would be negative or something would be upsetting me. And he would just give me the smile, and I would just, like it would just make me feel like, you know what? No, we can take anything on. Um, and the time with him, I feel like was a lot more precious to me than anything. So even now when people are saying, again, I don't know if it's a community thing or if it's just in general people saying, and they're saying, hey, would you think about another child? But like, to me, I don't ever feel incomplete, like, oh yeah, if something was to happen later, then that's fantastic. And, like, I am leaving that up to the universe. But for me, I don't feel like I've lost anything. Like, to me, I have two children.
And you always be
And I
Armaan's son.
always will. Yeah. So I think he's just taught me so much, and he's just had so much resilience, so much like seeing the small wins. I think that's the biggest thing I've learned from Armaan,
I
is
love
seeing
that.
littlest things as like, hey, that's a win for today.
It makes you live in the present moment and appreciate it, rather than
Definitely.
looking ahead and waiting for the big things to happen. I think as a special needs parent, it does teaches you to appreciate the wins and the smaller things, because
Yes,
that's actually that those turn out to be big wins for our children. And you become
definitely.
so content with life. Like, yes, you still dream big and you wish, maybe you hope and dream for some other things. But
Yeah,
if those things don't happen, it's okay. Because I
yeah,
think the way we get to live from inside out, you just get so filled with the unconditional love that our children teach us.
Yeah.
And I
It's
think
next level. Like I never thought that I could love so much and so unconditionally. Like I read things and my mum used to tell us, sometimes I'd go, Mum, how can you do this for us? Like, before we even say anything, And she's like, it's this unconditional love for your child and you'll know one day, And I just remember saying to my mum once, like, I get it, like I really do, because I could do anything for them,
exactly. And when
you
people
know?
wonder how do you do all that stuff, it's like
Yeah,
because they give you so much strength and they
they
kind
do.
of awaken the hidden power inside of you. And I think
Yeah,
we are the lucky ones that actually get to experience unconditional love. Yes,
yeah,
every parent and children have a very special bond, but when you have a special needs child,
yeah,
it's like added bonuses that come with it. Yes, the
yeah,
journey is hard, it's painful, it's tiring, it's exhausting.
yeah,
But on the other hand, the love that we get given, oh my God, my soul is so full.
yeah.
Like, that's what I feel like, I could die tomorrow and be
And be
so
so
happy,
happy. Yeah,
so happy. Like,
yeah.
I don't want to die tomorrow because I want to make sure I'm here for my child.
Yeah,
But I'm
yeah.
just
No, I
saying,
get what
like,
you mean though.
it's like it's contentment, right? It's like
It
you
is.
you just get to live the best part of your life
Yeah, you
for your
do. You
yeah.
do.
Because I know I'm just looking at the time. Can we sort of talk about? I know it's
Yes.
been about 7 months since Armaan has passed away. How has the grieving process been for you? Because I feel like this is another very sensitive topic
Yes.
that
Yeah.
maybe we don't have much education around.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know your experience. How has it been? How have people been with you? And how has your journey been with grieving?
Yeah. I mean, everybody's been very different because I guess everybody has their own journeys, and I get that. And I think it's quite interesting. Like I was speaking to one of Armand's physios, well, actually his physio in the last 18 months before he passed, and she became really close with us, and she pops in now and again and just checks in on us and how we're doing. And I remember her saying to me the other day that everybody's grief is very different, and everybody, like, you could be at a different stage,
Mm,
and other people are at a different stage. Um, but at no point should how they are dealing with their grief be your problem.
mm-hmm.
And I think when she said that, there was a big penny drop for me, because there's been a lot of times where I feel like I need to be strong in front of people and I need to be a certain way so that people don't then feel sorry for me and think, um, you know, oh well, maybe I can't express, or whatever. Like I don't know, like I don't know again if this is a community thing or if this what it is, but there's a lot of, when it comes to grief, there's a lot of, I feel like, almost competition of
Yeah.
who is suffering more.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's grief, it's loss. Everybody suffers in their own way, right? Like you've lost someone, everybody's lost something,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a child, whether it's a brother, whether it's a nephew, niece, whatever, like grandchild, great grandchild, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I just feel like people need to let go of the competition. Like it's not like, that's my biggest thing that I probably learned from this journey, like the grief journey anyway. There could be some days where I'm like, okay, I'm with it. I can take on today. And my husband's a complete mess, and he's really like very emotional. And there are other days where he's my rock and I'm the one that's
Yeah.
crying, and really little things will set me off. Like I didn't ever think that I could look at a what do they call, like a dedication that someone's written in a book for him and cry. And like, there was one that I found the other day, and because we read books, Anika and I, every night, before bed. And I saw one, and all it said was, to my Poppy, love Nani. And it's like, that just set me off. And it was like, I can't believe, and then I have other days where I can tell people a story from A to Z about how that last week and last 2 weeks were, of him passing, and then how we went through the process of planning a funeral and what we wanted for him and how we did the last 13 days of his, like prayers. Um, and I'll be absolutely fine. And it's crazy that, you can, at a drop of a hat, it's just something different that can trigger you each time. And I think for me, the biggest thing that I learned was in that last week, obviously I was grieving. Like I had to, like, in lack of a better words, I literally had to spend a week watching my son pass away,
Mm.
and all we could do was ease his pain by making sure he didn't like have that pain, you know. There was morphine, there was all these things that were helping him. But other than that, we just had to sort of wait and watch. And that was the hardest thing. And you know, because you know, you supported me so much. And I'm so grateful for that. Because it just helped me to see that actually just enjoy that you've got him. He's still
Mm.
here, you know. And I remember people saying to me, you know, but don't lose hope, you know. It's like he's not on any food, he's not on any liquid, he's literally running on morphine, and people are still saying, don't lose hope, you know, miracles can happen. And I just remember feeling really like, again, you know, this is part of like just me grieving, I suppose, but I
Mm.
remember being so straight up with people and saying, I got my miracle 3 years ago.
I love that.
You
Oh,
know, I did, because he could have not made it after that 15 minutes, but he did, you know, and he did everything to like make me brave, make me strong, and make me resilient. And then in that last week, he gave us more than what I could ever have asked for in a lifetime with him, you know? And so for me, it was like, it's not, excuse me, it was like, for me, it's not like I've missed out on anything, and I'm not losing hope that he wasn't going to make it through that. But we found peace in knowing that he is at the point where we are doing everything we can to help him, and we have to be strong enough to let him go. And so I think now living with the happy memories and all the good things that we did is just like next level. And I think I said this to my husband last weekend, is there's a company or charity by the name of Baby Loss that do like castings for babies' hands, and
mm.
you know, they have this beautiful like service that they provide, and they do these volunteer days. And I remember when I went to pick up Armaan's casts, I said to myself, you know what, I'm going to come back and help these people one day at a volunteer day, because what they did, they stepped in and did for us, is just given us, you know, we've got these castings of his hands that when we miss him, we can hold them, and
Mm.
it feels like you're holding his hand, you know. And so I was like, you know, I would love to give back to this amazing group. And I just remember going to that volunteer day a couple of weeks ago and listening to all these stories of all these mums that had lost children that they didn't even get to spend time with, you know, like stillborns or premature babies or whatever the case is, you know. For them, they had this little angel and they had them for that little time, and then they were gone. So they are dealing with a totally different side of things. And I remember, because I went with a friend of mine, and I remember saying to her, I actually just feel really grateful right now that I got 3 amazing years with this little boy, and I got to make these memories with him. You know, these poor, like these mothers only got to make memories for those few hours. I got 3 years of it. So, you know, like I felt so like my cup was so full that day. And I just felt like it was so lovely to be around mums that A, were going through the same kind of thing. But also I just felt so grateful that I had had him for that long. And I think that's helped me like further along, in the sense that yes, I miss him, but I have this beautiful stuff that I can look back on in videos again. You know, like technology is amazing that I can sit there with Anika and go, we're missing Maya today. That's all right. Like, let's watch these videos of him and like giggle at the things that he used to do with
Mm.
you, and, you know, the funny noises he made and the funny like faces he made and the cheeky looks that he was giving us. Um, yeah, so I just feel like it's the biggest thing I've taken away is that it's so different for each person, and people need to stop competing. They need to stop thinking that their grief is more than yours, because it's not. You know,
Do you
it's
know? I,
that's your grief.
yeah, and I actually I voiced that as well because I
Yeah,
have been researching. I wanted to research a little bit about grief before I spoke with you because I wanted to
yeah,
make sure that I say the right things and And
yeah.
one of the things they talk about is people. There's three things you should never do. So one is never give like unsolicited advice to a
Advice.
grieving person
Yeah.
because they do not need to hear any advice in that moment.
Yes.
Unless they ask for it, do not
Yeah.
give any advice
Any
because
advice?
yeah, all you need to do is just be with them. The second thing was not rushing people to get over their loss
Yeah.
because everyone processes their loss at a different rate, like you said.
Yeah.
So just because you might be there doesn't mean the other person is
Anybody
there as well.
else's.
Do
Yeah.
not rush them, let them have their space. And the third thing was not to compare pain because, sorry, I've just got something in my eye. Um, so yeah, not to compare pain because everyone experiences pain differently. It doesn't mean that your pain is greater than the other person's pain. But and like being a special needs family, you
Yeah.
go through a lot, and as you go through the grieving process as well, you kind of reliving every stage of that person's life. You
Yeah.
kind of see everything. So I admire you for being able to speak about it so bravely, Malvi,
Thanks.
because and speak with it with such positivity as well. I mean, I
Yeah.
know you're emotional, but you also are speaking and voicing the such with with so much beauty. And I appreciate that because a lot of people don't get to don't get to voice
Yeah.
the true feelings. And I'm glad we've been able to do this with you today.
Yeah.
And grieving is different. And like with death, we all are going to experience it at some
Yeah.
stage, one way or the other. And I guess the question is, what do we do with it? And I think the
Yeah.
best thing to do with it is to share your experiences
Yeah.
and how because you don't know who's listening, right? Who's going to watch this, and
That's right.
they might not have anyone to talk about it, but if they can hear your story and go, actually, Malavi lost her son, yet she's here sitting and talking about it in such a positive way that, yes, grieving is painful, it comes in waves, you're going to have good days, bad days, but you still can live with the beautiful memories, and that memories will carry, take you through.
Take you through. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And I just think like, I mean, I would look at this whole process and the whole journey that we've been through, and I just feel like, just even sharing any part of it, if that helps anyone,
Mm.
like to me, that's a big win, because it makes me feel like something that somebody can learn from, you know, our experiences and our son's journey, like it's a bonus. And I just feel like, again, in our community, I feel like special needs, death, and like just this whole journey is just not spoken of, and it's one of those things that it really needs to change.
Mm.
And I feel like, like it's all good to be inclusive and to say that you understand, but you can understand and then come in, like, we were talking about before, come in and just say something and then walk away, and for you, you've let that out off your chest, but for us, that's going to fester, and that's going to be something that's going to go round and round. And sometimes it's not even something that anybody says. Sometimes it's actually the way, like, your body language actually says a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people forget that. And it's really interesting. Like, you could be doing the smallest thing and thinking, like, we had a lot of that when we first had Anika, where there was lots of friends and family that wanted to come and help, and their version of help was to look after Anika. But to Armaan, it was like you could see it on his face that how come she's getting um
Mm.
like how come they only want her, like that kind of thing. And I remember it used to just break my heart because it was like that's not what it is, better, and I didn't ever want him to resent her for that. But again, like their bond was so strong that she would not stay far away from him for very long, so that, I mean, for us, sort of helped aid that situation. But like for me, it's like, talk about these things, look for the support that you need, and reach out and talk to people. Like, I remember when I first reached out to you, I thought, okay, this is another special needs mum. Okay, maybe not the same diagnosis for our children, but the underlying elements, yeah,
Yeah.
are the same, and having to try and advocate for your child when there are people out there that have that negative energy or whatever it was. It's like, just, yeah, just be brave and like make that effort to reach out to people is all I can say, because these journeys are hard enough as it is, and whether you're affected by people with special needs or any disabilities or illnesses or whatever it is, it's like it's a hard road and you need people around you. So yeah, it's like I always say, it takes a village, like it really does. And it does for any stage in life, like not even just having kids. So yeah, so I'm very, very grateful to the likes of yourself and the friendship that we've got. And also just our friends and family that have helped us along this journey, because like I say, there were people that would go leaps and bounds, and then there have been people that, once things have changed, has been different, and that's fine. That's what they want to do, and where you stand with people. So it's
And I
just,
guess
yeah,
that's the journey of life, right? People will come and
exactly.
go, and people that
Yes.
matter will actually stay through. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad you made the connection that day to connect with me on Instagram, because
Yeah.
I feel honored that I got to connect with Armaan, and especially in the last
Yeah.
week. I never
Yes.
got to meet him in person, but I remember, because when you told me he was in the hospital and how things were looking,
Yeah.
I was doing Reiki, and Reiki is not a
Yeah.
magical cure. Reiki knows what to do. In
Yeah.
Armaan's case, it probably brought him so much comfort. And I remember sending angels to surround him as well. And
Yeah.
I remember I tuned in to Armaan, and I was like, through my Reiki, and I said, Armaan, is there anything you want? And I got the message, ice cream. Do
Ice
you
cream.
remember?
Yeah.
And I messaged you saying, hey, take ice cream
Take
for
ice
Armaan.
cream for him.
And one of the last visions I was given for Armaan was when I was shown, I'm not going to talk about it, but you know what it is, when
Yeah.
I was shown a
Yeah.
vision, and I just knew that Armaan was going to leave, and I was told not to tell you, but I
Yeah.
was so overwhelmed with it that I had to come running downstairs, and I just rolled my eyes in front of my husband, and I said,
Yeah.
Armaan's going to go.
Yeah.
And then I later on told you that I don't normally share anything with my husband, outside of my
Yeah.
session or
Yeah.
anyone. But I said to you, I'm sorry I did that because I had
No.
to do it. And you said it was fine.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
I think we connected again after all the prayers and
yeah,
stuff had finished, right? And I was like, is it okay for you to tell me now? And I just
yeah.
remember, like, yeah, again, it was one of those sessions where we were both sitting there in tears, but it was just the most beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I remember,
Yeah.
I think it might have been during one of the 13 night pujas, right?
It
Because
was, I think it was, yeah.
I messaged you, and then when you asked me, 'cause, you asked me, and then I told you what it was, and it was such a confirmation because it had something to do with Lord Krishna, the vision that
Yes.
I had, and
Yeah.
you said, "Oh my God, you and your husband were just kind of." You said to me, "This message couldn't have come at a better time." I remember you saying
Yes.
that, and I just went. I feel like my shoulders had dropped because I was holding on to this thing
Onto
that
that
I
for,
couldn't tell
yeah.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Because, yeah, I think I told you as well, right? My mum had been given this message,
yeah,
like
yeah,
similarly with Lord Krishna,
mm,
and she also didn't say anything. And that was the actually within those hours when he passed.
yeah,
Um, and then when she told me about it, and then when you told me your vision, that was just like that, all just, it
yeah.
just,
It
yeah,
just all made sense.
yeah.
And
There's
then
no coincidence in
there's
it.
no
Like it was, yeah,
coincidence. There's absolutely no coincidence in our lives. Everything happens as it's meant to. And as you open up to the spiritual world, everything comes in as a message. And I remember when Armaan had passed away during one of your 13 days prayers, my husband was outside, he was doing something, and I happened to be in the kitchen, and so our window kind of opens up fully and you can
yeah,
kind of see each other, and I was talking to him, and I happened to look up at the clouds, and I sent you the photo, and it was the most beautiful baby angel.
yeah.
I can't remember the full thing, because
Had
there
the
was,
wings
yeah,
and
it had the
yeah,
wings and everything, but there was a deeper message, and I remember telling you what it was, and it
yeah,
was just a man coming through to show us that he was fine, and I had to give you that photo, and it was just so evident in that photo what we saw.
yeah.
So I thank you for including me in your journey.
Thank you.
As a special needs mum, I feel honored to be in your journey because what I learned through Armand's last days is going to stay with me forever. And you know how you said, even if one person gets touched by your story, well, I'm touched by your story as a special needs mum. And as I look at you, I'm like, I know one day I'm going to be on the other side as well. And just looking at you, I'm like, it'll be
It
okay.
is possible.
It is possible. We'll get there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
So I just want to thank you, Malvi, for
Thank
being here.
you.
If there's
Thank you.
anything else you want to say before we end?
No,
If there's
no.
anything
Thank
left in your
you.
mind?
No. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Like honestly, it's been something that like we were talking about it before. We were really nervous before we started. But no, like I say, I just hope that this helps someone somewhere. Um, and again, just touching on like your visions, and I remember I think I'd messaged you about it, and it was this guilt that you hang on to, and could we have
Mm,
done anything better as parents, or whatever it is. And again, the timing, the universe knows what you need at what time, and people come and go from your lives, whether it's through passing or whatever, at the time that they're supposed to. And I just remember, that dream I told you about where I did see Armaan happy, and he's like
Mm-hmm.
peering through a gate and looking at me and giggling, and it's like, I see you. And every time I said that, I remember, in that dream, and he's running away and giggling. And for me, he's giggling, he's running. That stuff that I never got to see him do in real life, but I saw him do it in a dream, and that for me is like just the most beautiful thing. And the fact that, like, just being connected with you, I feel like I could open myself up to see all of that so much clearer, and help Anika in that process, and help like my husband in that process. So yeah, like I'm really, really grateful to just everything that you have been able to give us and been able to help us through.
It's been my honor, and yeah, you're just so beautiful, and I just wish you all the best in your journey going
Thank you.
forward. I know it is a wave, this grief
Yes.
journey, so
Yeah.
I'm here anytime you need me, and
Perfect.
I'm just so proud of you, Malvi.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you for being here. I really honor your bravery to be speaking about this today with us. And you know what? I want to do another podcast with you maybe next year and
Sure.
just touch base with you and see where you are. It'll
Yeah.
be really nice for people to have another, glance into your life to see how you're doing and what you've
Yeah,
learned.
definitely.
And yeah, perfect.
That
Thank you
sounds
so much. I
lovely.
appreciate
Thank
being here,
you.
Malvi. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks.